Hello, everybody. Welcome to AmateurCast, the show where we pretend to know what we're talking about. My name is Sebastian Limon, and I am joined with Kolby Leapies.
Shut up, Josh.
Oh. Oh, no. And we are meeting again with our very own Tyler Munoz. Say hi,
Did you
Tyler.
fellas, did you miss me? I'm back.
So dearly.
Oh, wow.
Your boy is back. We have Tyler
This
back
time it's
here.
personal.
One, not because he was good. We just thought, because he likes Gojira a little bit. He's been, I think he's been watching some of the Gojira movies recently. By the way, I was totally kidding. You are really good. I'm glad you're back.
No, you're fine.
Oh yeah. Tyler apparently has been watching. How many have you seen so far of the Godzilla movies?
So, over quarantine, I received as a gift a box set of the Godzilla movies, and I haven't gotten the chance to go through them. So, once the trailer dropped for this new movie for Kong versus Godzilla, or what, I thought now would be a good time to go through them. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, because I haven't, seen them before, besides the original. So I've seen so far. Let me think. I've seen the entirety of the Showa era, which is from the 60s to the 70s. The franchise is pretty much divided by fans into 3 eras, which is the Showa, the Heisei, and the Millennium.
I see.
And that's pretty much just whenever they decide to reboot it. So I've only been going through the original during the 60s and 70s. And gosh, I just looked it up because I just totally forgot off the top of my head, but I've seen 14 of the original, so that's twice as many. I just forgot half of them because they're not very good. But yeah, so I've familiarized myself with it a bit.
I'm familiar with Godzilla.
Put it in a kind of pretentious way. So yeah, so that's what I've been doing leading up to this thing.
Well, I'm glad it gave us an excuse to have you back on the show because our episode on Soul and Wolfwalkers is genuinely maybe my favorite episode we've done.
I have that effect.
If you guys want to check out that episode where we discuss the animation of Soul and Wolfwalkers with Tyler, then you should check it out. It's episode 12 of our podcast. It's really, really good. And today, we're going to be talking about the original King Kong film from 1933, directed by Marion Cooper and Ernest Schudsack, as well as the original Godzilla film from 1954, specifically the original Japanese version, known as Gojira. We're not going to talk about the Americanized version, just so everybody knows, because there is 2 different versions. The one directed by Ishiro Honda, and then we're going to be finally talking about the brand new huge blockbuster that just came out this week, the Adam Wingard directed film Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm very excited to get into the deep, symbolic, meta commentaries of these our auteur cinematic pieces.
Correct. Yes. We will begin with King Kong 1933. So, King Kong 1933 is essentially the classic monster movie. It's about this filmmaker named Carl Denham who's trying to make his next movie. He basically briefly casts this woman named Ann Darrow from the street and kind of takes her to go film a movie. And they're going on an expedition to Skull Island to film the movie. And when they get down, they are met with natives and none other than King Kong. Not the biggest, but the creature who's king of all of the other creatures on the island. And it's the classic monster movie, essentially. It's a classic in general. It's not just a classic monster movie. It's it's literally the iconic image of the monkey, the giant ape on the Empire State Building or the giant ape with the woman in his hand. It started so many things, and it inspired so many filmmakers to make movies, including Peter Jackson, who went off to remake it and have his own version, which personally I really love. I don't know how you guys feel about that one, but it's just a hallmark of, and just a almost like an antique in a way. It's a classic. It's one of the greatest films to be like ever made, and one of the most inspiring, and even in terms of its technical achievements, it's super ahead of its time, and just but there are definitely some things that are a little dated. Obviously, we can get into that. But what do you guys think of King Kong 1933?
I like it. I mean, it's such just a fun adventure film. Like it's like you said, it's going to this far away, imaginative island with all these prehistoric creatures, and I think the best part of these monster movies, King Kong and Godzilla specifically, is always the imagination in the monster designs and in the landscapes that they come up with. They always have these cool like creative prehistoric places, and I just like seeing not only like the cool creature designs they can come up with, but also like reading the stories behind those designs and where they came from. Like the monster that comes out of the ditch to try to eat Jack in one scene, which went on to inspire the skull crawlers in Kong Skull Island, was supposed to look more like an actual dinosaur, but then they just, to save money, they didn't give it legs. And it ended up being this, I think, way cooler and way scarier looking, like snake-like thing that crawls on two arms and kind of slithers around. And they literally just couldn't afford legs for it. Like, I think stuff like that is so fun. The movie is known for its incredible stop motion animation for its creatures, and for 1933, the way that they're superimposed into the film is really, really impressive. Obviously, now it kind of has a charm to it for being very, very dated.
Yeah.
The animation, I mean, some of the story elements date themselves in a way that is not charming, but it's just like racist.
Sexist.
Yeah. Sexism is like, all the characters in the movie are so incredibly sexist towards this woman.
It's kind of funny.
Hello.
It's I mean, it's funny because we can look at it in 2021 and say how horrible it is.
It's a time capsule. That's really what it is. I think it's fun to look back at movies and things, to see things that were kind of accepted and things that were okay, as to like now. It's like there's no way a movie would have that dialogue or those kind of interactions and be okay today. But we watch it and kind of see like, oh, this was back in the day. It was of its time. It's not right, but it's this is what happened. We can't just take that away from it. I mean, it's history. I hate having to kind of rewrite history in that way.
There's a line where I think it's Jack, says something about women, and and literally just goes, "But Jack, you hate women," and that made me laugh so hard. Like, it's not supposed to be a funny scene.
Oh no!
But just the way it's delivered is so goofy. But I'm glad that the more recent Kong movies have done a better job with that aspect.
I think I think what makes the original King Kong so interesting to me is it's like really just like shaped by the era it was made in. And I think a testament to that is also just like how like most like remakes of it are set in the past. It's really like a movie that could only really exist in the time it was made, and a lot of that has to do with just this kind of idealism that America had, and just this kind of fascination with the exotic. And because back then, I mean, nowadays we could just look up any place in the world, and we know instantly what it's like. Back then they didn't, and so this fascination with just these like foreign lands are really like the heart and soul of Kong, and that's rooted in like imperialism, colonization, but it makes for a good movie. I think along with that, like the special effects, like Kong was made to be animated. If you look at let's say 1962's original Godzilla versus King Kong, they use some dude in a suit, and it looks really, really bad. And I think what makes Kong so special as a movie and as a character is the way he emotes. A lot of times in monster movies, the monster is just this huge force of nature who just has no emotion and just rampages the city. But
and that definitely applies to Godzilla, which we'll touch on.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's basically Godzilla.
Yeah, exactly. But Kong, he feels like a character, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's a primate versus, like, let's say, like a lizard or a giant bug, and so emotions are a lot easier to register on his face. But I think it's also a testament to like the power of like stop motion animation. The animator, what's his name? Willis O'Brien. He's one of the greatest ever. He did also The Lost World beforehand. And his skill as a stop motion animator is, the fact that we're even talking about this movie today is proves how
90 years
it's
later.
a testament to his talent. It's a testament to what he does.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Just...
I think it's easy to brush off, these old movies as cheesy, and they are, but I feel like you really need to put yourself in the mindset of the time it was made in. And even if you don't, it's still pretty impressive today.
Oh yeah, like the way they're able to kind of incorporate people into certain shots. How I think they even had photographs of people and did stop motion with that, and even how intense the sequences with the dinosaurs are, even for like back in the day, it's pretty scary. And violent. I was surprised by how violent and gruesome some of the moments in the movie is.
Yeah, it gets pretty intense.
This movie's brutal, which is something I love about it. Like for 1933, it is so brutal and it's like gory.
Yeah.
The way they scream and just the music, it's intense and it's fun.
Yeah. And that's carried over in King Kong a lot throughout the years, throughout the different iterations, is a more personal brutality where you're actually seeing like people getting ripped apart and stuff.
Yeah.
I love that.
Never in like the Godzilla. I don't know. The only ones that I've seen are obviously the original and the MonsterVerse ones, and sadly the really bad Roland Emmerich one. But yeah, not good. But like Godzilla is not as violent as like King Kong. Like a lot of the violence is implied in Godzilla, like from the original, at least from what I've seen. Yeah, like you see the building and collapsing, that people are in there. But in King Kong, you see people getting eaten, getting stepped on, thrown apart, and it's super fun, and I think it's great. I would like to ask, who do you guys prefer, or like which one is your favorite out of the two movies?
Movies, or you mean like the original Godzilla or the original?
Yeah.
Well, for me that's like apples to oranges, but I think probably Godzilla is my favorite, just because I feel like it has more of a message to it. King Kong is it is a really good movie. And it's like one of the greatest, I feel, but it doesn't really have a moral or a message to take home with you, and that's okay. It doesn't need to. Sometimes just a movie about a giant monkey can be fun, but I feel like Godzilla really. Well, we could get more into this once we transition into that movie.
Yeah.
But Godzilla, the original, like really sits with you, especially once you consider its origins. I feel like there's just a lot more to it, and that's not to downplay King Kong's strengths. It's definitely like a tragedy about human greed, but I feel like a lot of it is rooted in American imperialism and American colonization and America fetishizing other cultures. And I don't think like they sat down and rubbed their hands together and were thinking, oh, we're going to make a racist movie. But it does
The
just...
Council of Racist Directors decided.
The CEO of racism bursts into the room.
The CEO
But
of
no,
racism.
but like actually, I just feel like it's definitely if there's one thing that holds it back, it's that I feel like it's a lot less made with artistic I guess value,
with something to interpret.
Yeah,
than entertainment.
yeah, it's more of just an entertaining movie. It's a horror movie, and that's all it needs to be.
Yeah.
But when you really dig into it, when you're comparing the two, I think it's worth noting that both just kind of reflect America specifically. What with because it was the Hiroshima bomb, and with King Kong, it's more about, at face value, it's more about human greed.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think the movies are more alike than a lot of people realize. But at the same time, solely because of who's making it, that really differentiates them and gives you a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I definitely prefer Godzilla, but I think Kong also has its own strengths. Like I said, I think stop motion's a lot better than suitmation, which is what the Godzilla movies utilized. I think just the tragedy of Kong is a lot more. You get a lot more emotionally attached to King Kong than like Godzilla, for example, who's more of just like a big hulking force of nature, whereas King Kong.
Like Godzilla is more of a villain, whereas King Kong's kind of like a sympathetic, tragic story.
King Kong's just kind of dragged into all of it.
Yeah.
Whereas Godzilla almost feels like you said, like a villain, or more so,
movie.
Yeah, or more so just reflective of, actual, things that happen.
Actual fear. Yeah.
Actual fears. Thank you.
It's it's almost it's a monster version of the actual fears that the Japanese felt in that time because of the bombings. Whereas King Kong is just a fun monster horror movie. Right. But you can have some implications too about American greed, and obviously it's so revolutionary because of the special effects and just the iconic imagery, like I mentioned before.
Yeah.
But what about you, Kolby?
I agree that King Kong is thematically weaker than Godzilla based on what you're saying, and like you can chalk a big reason for that up to the fact that King Kong came out before World War II and Godzilla came out pretty soon after. Like you said, like the ways that the imperialism and the war are depicted in the two movies have like really, really different perspectives because they're made by two different countries before and after this life-changing war. Like what you're saying about the imperialism idea, like there's a really strong sense of manifest destiny from the characters in King Kong, and to some extent the movie critiques that and pushes back on that. Like, obviously that backfires on the characters, and the movie's 90-year-old, so spoiler alert, but most of them die.
In horrible,
but at the same
ways.
time, the movie's depictions of the Skull Island natives are racist themselves.
Yeah,
It's really bad.
that kind of
So the movie doesn't fulfill its themes perfectly.
yeah, that kind of like undermines what it's trying to go for me.
Yeah, that's fine.
When I watch the movie, I feel like it is very socially. I want to say it's progressive for 1933, but like by today's standards, it's horribly dated.
The most racist thing ever made, yeah.
Well, still Birth of a Nation.
Oh damn.
But yeah, I probably like the character of King Kong better because, like you were saying, like he is a character, whereas Godzilla, and for thematic reasons, is a force of nature and is just like a hulking monster and not a person, right? King Kong feels like more of a person. I think what was so revolutionary about the 1933 King Kong is that it was kind of the first major monster movie to turn the monster into a real character with a real personality that you can feel for. At least the first major American one, because everything that American monster movies did in the 30s was copied from what Germany was doing in the 20s.
It might have been like Frankenstein,
but
and
right,
King Kong. Yeah, Frankenstein was definitely.
I mean, Frankenstein was the same year as this, right?
No, 1931. So I think Frankenstein would have been the first.
Oh, you're right. So yeah,
but
probably.
No, I know what you mean. Like, because King Kong looks more like a monster, whereas Frankenstein.
Yes,
is kind of a person. He
still
in a way.
Fits like the hulking monster idea, whereas Frankenstein is straight up like a dude.
Yeah,
and I think
just
this
an
definitely
actual man
is a part of that.
Human.
Yeah, I think this definitely is a part of that very important movement that I would say started in the 30s of turning your monsters into characters, which would go on to inspire people like Peter Jackson and like Guillermo del Toro, who have throughout their careers have loved to explore, the beauty and the heart of our monster characters. I mean, we could go on and on about how important this movie is and how many things and people it inspired. Like we couldn't fit it all into one episode.
I mean, this movie is like it's so awesome. It's I would have to agree with Kolby here in that it's I prefer King Kong overall, not just as a character but as a movie in general. Even like in terms of pacing wise, like I was shocked that this was in 1933. The movie is either action with creatures or really funny sexist dialogue. And you know what I mean? And so I'm just thoroughly entertained throughout. Not that it's okay. I'm just
and laughing. It wasn't meant to be funny at all.
No, it wasn't meant to be funny. It was meant to be serious and I just find it super humorous and super funny. So throughout I'm thoroughly entertained. And I can't say the same thing with the original Godzilla. Although I can really appreciate the themes that it's going for, and obviously the reaction of the Japanese back in the day with the bombings, and that this was kind of like their reaction to what happened, to making it into a movie, yeah, King Kong all the way, for the same reasons you guys were saying. He's a better character in general. I think the movie is just much more entertaining. It's I would definitely go back to it more and more than I would the original Godzilla, personally. And also, I grew up with King Kong. Peter Jackson's King Kong.
Same here, yeah.
Was one that was in the house a lot of the times. I went to the theater for that. It was one of the... it's definitely one of the movies that inspire me, because it's classic adventure, but it's monster and... Beauty Killed the Beast type of story. It's great. I love it. And I mean, I don't know what else can be said about the original King Kong other than it has its dated moments for sure, but we can definitely appreciate especially for the time, the technical aspects of it, the classic story of going on a journey to an island and fighting all these monsters and bringing them back, and it's great stuff. I really love this movie.
One thing I wanted to bring up is that, like, in these new MonsterVerse movies that have been coming out, the biggest complaint from people is the human characters, and that there's too much screen time spent on the human characters, not enough on the monsters. And something that really stuck out to me watching these two originals is that there is a lot of screen time in both of them spent on human characters. But I think the big difference is that, first of all, they're just better written characters. Like, the characters in the new one are just generally not interesting for specific reasons, but we can get into that. No. But a big thing about this one is that the characters kind of are only important in the first half when they give the exposition, right? And once King Kong actually comes out, once you actually are revealed the big monkey, you don't even really need to follow the characters anymore. The character arcs stop mattering, and it's just like non-stop big monkey action.
They're there
and non-stop,
for
like, incredible animation.
And not giving actual bullshit about these people. But they're also kind of fun. Like, I remember... I know in the beginning of the episode I forgot Carl Denham's name, but, like, that name, Carl Denham, is, like, a classic 1930s name. And Daryl, you don't know anything about her character, but it's just, like... It's an iconic look. It's an iconic image. And you wouldn't have that if there were just zero characters in the movie at all.
Yeah.
So, but
and the characters the characters kind of come back into the plot at the very end to, like, nail in the idea and the theme of, like, the 'twas beauty that killed the beast, give us those iconic lines, and to give us some stakes, because if all the main characters are alive at the very end, then it's like, or if I should say, if none of the main characters are at risk or peril in the finale, then it doesn't feel like a very climactic finale. But for most of the middle section of the movie, the actual characters and their developments aren't that important to the plot.
No, it's
and I think
you need to escape this island.
Yeah, and I think in these new MonsterVerse movies, the plot often gets bogged down by character motivations and stuff, when all anybody wants is big monkey punch big lizard. And as much as pretentious as we are on this podcast, and as much as I love discussing, the real artistic, symbolic qualities of filmmaking, like, the best parts of these movies are big monkey, big lizard action.
That's what you need. Sometimes
that's what we're here for. Yeah.
I agree. We'll get to that soon, but I completely agree.
Do you guys want to rate King Kong 1933?
Yeah.
I'd probably give it like a 9 out of 10. I think it's just a really, really solid movie. The only thing that holds it back are just the context of the time, but it's not like that's really its choice.
Yeah.
10 out of 10. Love this movie. So much fun. Fun creature stuff. Great stop motion. It's a classic. It's either super fun creature things or really, really funny sexist dialogue. I'm just thoroughly entertained throughout. Yeah, great movie. 10 out of 10. One of my favorites.
I'm going to give it an 8. And I would really like a t-shirt that says super fun creature things. Thank you for that.
Nice.
Moving on. 1954's Godzilla. Came about after World War II and after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, after the years of radiation and general fear of nuclear holocaust. In the plot of the movie, basically this giant prehistoric lizard monster is reawoken in the ocean after years of being dormant by American nuclear weapons testing, and it attacks the island of Japan. So, that alone, like, the basic premise is already pretty thematically heavy, obviously. Like we were saying earlier, this is a much more... I think it's a much deeper movie than the original King Kong. it has a lot more to say politically and thematically.
It's definitely a drama.
Yes, yes. This is less of a fun adventure movie and much more of a genuine dramatic horror.
Yeah, definitely.
I had never seen this until just last week when I watched it to prep for this podcast and for seeing the new Godzilla vs. Kong. I liked it a lot. What about you guys?
Yeah.
Go for it, Tyler.
Yeah. So I think the original Godzilla is, well, obviously, one of the most like greatest, most influential movies of all time. I think, like King Kong, it's really it's shaped by the era it was made in, inspired by Hiroshima, but it was also inspired by the Lucky Dragon 5 incident, which was where nuclear tests contaminated a fishing crew, and they got these like horrible like scars and effects from the radiation. And so Godzilla is just a lot heavier and it has a lot more to say. This was kind of dropped later on in the series, but this original one is really, it's just a snapshot of post-war Japan and post-war America too, because it wasn't just inspired by the nuke, but the testing that went afterwards. I mean, the Pandora's box was opened by that bomb, and this movie kind of personifies it in the form of Godzilla. I mean, even Godzilla himself is shaped by this. His scales were made to look like radiation scars on these people. And so it's a heavy one, and it plays it a lot straighter than I think people remember. People associate Godzilla with goofy monster fights and like sci-fi aliens coming down.
Yeah,
and that's fair.
Which is what all the later ones.
That's what it became.
Yeah.
In like straight up just like the second one, and it wouldn't ever really get back into that until like Shin Godzilla, which like came out a few years ago. But this original one, it's more so just. It's a snapshot, and I think it focuses a lot more on the human characters than people remember. This movie has pretty strong human characters, and the drama that goes in between the monster scenes. I mean, that too, captures the time it was made in. The doctor. What was his name?
Mani?
I think
or
so.
Serizawa?
Not Serizawa. But yeah, the first one. He doesn't want to kill this thing, the Godzilla. And that was formed by Ishiro Honda's respect for the scientists who, were around at the time. Serizawa, who was the person who ultimately killed Godzilla, but he represents the people who worked on the nuke itself. In the movie, Serizawa creates a weapon called the Oxygen Destroyer, and he's at war with himself on whether or not it should be used. That's a pretty clear, symbol for those who worked on the nuke. And so all of these elements together just really form a really interesting perspective that Americans just don't really think about all too often. It's just evident by the Americanized version, which pretty much strips it of all subtext and turns it into just a general monster movie. I think, I mean, I don't know. I think it's just a really, really strong film. And something really interesting about it is this is like the only real Godzilla movie that really focuses on the destruction it makes. There's these scenes where you just see, people in hospitals, and the burnt down rubble. That's, it's horrifying because
you definitely see the aftermath of the destruction. It's not
Yes.
played fun.
This is the only one that shows you the aftermath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really harkens back to pretty much any disaster, just in mankind. It's less so about Godzilla and more so about the people and how they react to it.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, and of course, the special effects, I just ragged on it earlier, but I think they're pretty solid here. Mostly, I think it being black and white helps shield a lot of the imperfections.
I was gonna say the black and white definitely helps with the way it looks. I mean,
Yeah,
you can tell that they're miniatures and it's a guy in a puppet, but it's not distracting.
right.
I think it
Yeah.
is.
I think I almost feel like the limitations of this thing help sell it a little more. You know, in this one versus like later where he's like fighting other monsters, but in this one Godzilla moves really slowly and just in a really awkward fashion. That's just because the suit was like really heavy, but I think it helps sell the idea that he's like this just force of nature. You know, he's an
This
animal.
hulking, massive being.
Yeah, for sure. But that does come at the expense of emotion, like King Kong. But I don't think
Yeah.
it needs to
Yeah.
have that because that's not what Godzilla at this point isn't a character. He's a symbol. And I think that's a really important
Yeah.
distinction to make between this one and, you know, the original King Kong and other monster movies of the time. And I think that's what makes this one so special. It's really just a commentary on everything going on in post-war Japan.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I don't know. I just think it's a really, really strong film. And it's just knowing the context makes it like 10 times as scary, even today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the characters themselves are much less emotionally engaging and than in King Kong, and like I think the reason for that is that they seem not to be less individually crafted characters and more just representations of the people of Japan at whole. Like the first 20 minutes of these movies, there aren't really characters with their own stories. There's just like these crowds of screaming people. It takes a while for you to actually meet like Dr. Yamane and Dr. Serizawa. Um, there is a romantic subplot that I find
Which is
really
the
uninteresting.
worst part of the movie, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the only part of the movie that really holds it back for me. But for the most part, when the characters are being focused on, it's like that ethical dilemma that you were talking about with Serizawa, which I think is so fascinating and is something that other big monster movies just don't touch on at all. Um, I mean, maybe Pacific Rim to some small extent, but which is obviously something that is hugely inspired by this movie. Um, like that goes without saying. But yeah, both the human characters and the monster itself are much less emotional than in King Kong, but are thematically so much stronger.
Yeah. I would agree with you there with the characters, Kolby, because I think that's what kind of holds me back from liking this as much as I love King Kong, because yeah, I can really appreciate the thematic elements of what Godzilla represents and seeing the aftermath of destruction, all the outcries of the people, their screams. It's really really well made stuff. But what holds it back is essentially these characters that we're following, and besides the doctors and all the government dilemmas, and even the dilemma between trying to decide whether to use this creation or not, the oxygen destroyer. I don't really care what was happening, especially the love interest. It was that stuff kind of dragged my interest or entertainment down severely. Not to the point where it's like, this movie sucks. Like, no, this movie's awesome, and I can definitely see myself watching it again. But because King Kong had a lot going for it, I can definitely. I would go back to watching King Kong sooner than Godzilla for that reason. But mainly because I think it's just more entertaining, and I think the pacing is better in King Kong. Like some of the pacing in Godzilla, I was surprised that it was made in 1954. It felt like a 1930s movie from the pacing. It felt like something like The Mummy or Frankenstein. And not that that's bad. because it's of the time. But I was expecting the pacing of a 1950s movie. Who knows? The second time I could, not care as much now that I know. But I was definitely held back by that. I was like, oh, this feels like a movie that feels older than it does, even though it's made in 1954. But besides that, great stuff. I was shocked at how depressing it is. How it does kind of contradict a little bit how silly the costume can look sometimes, and when it's waving its arms and its tail, when it's trying to be a serious drama. Sometimes that, not contradicting, but it kind of is, what's the term? Just it's a little dated in that aspect at moments, maybe. But for a good amount of the movie, I was definitely into what it was going for sure. No, but yeah, I sound like I'm beating up the movie, but I really like it. I just obviously have my thoughts on it for sure, but overall, it's really great.
One major piece of praise that I really want to give it is that it has some of, if not my all-time favorite sound design.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The sound is, I mean, the obvious, thing is the monster scream. The Godzilla roar is so iconic, and yet it is still so like gut-wrenching and horrific. But part of what I love about it is the people screams. There's this scene that you were talking about earlier, Tyler, with where you're seeing the aftermath. You're seeing these several families, groups of people just lying in the street with all this rubble around them, trying to recover from the destruction. And there's this baby screaming in the background of this one scene as plot is being delivered.
Oh
And
yeah.
it is like, I mean, that was the most emotional part of the movie for me. I was really just like stunned and like really engaged in that scene because of how horrific this baby screaming throughout the entire thing was, and how like ear piercing it was. It's horrible to listen to, but it's like genius sound design.
Yeah, the sounds in this thing are just ingenious. I don't know if you know this, but the way his roar was made was they got this glove and they covered it in like resin and they pulled it across like a violin. Oh, I'm sorry, a cello.
Oh,
And that's what
The
makes like
cello
this.
strings, right?
And the entire thing. Oh my god.
Sorry.
The entire thing's just filled with genius design like that. And the score also by Akira Ifukube is super. I mean, it's iconic, obviously, but it's just a very solid score in addition. I think the sounds.
Oh, the score is awesome.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love the score.
I think the sounds in the score are what solidified this as a horror movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Bom, 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 bom. Like the classic monster theme. And I love that I have thoughts of the MonsterVerse movies of recent, but I love that they were able to carry, especially even in King of the Monsters, Godzilla's classic theme into modern, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah,
So it's a great theme.
I mean, it's it's iconic.
Do you guys want to rate the movie?
I'd rate it probably the same as King Kong, a 9 out of 10. The two totally different movies, but I think in what they try to do, what their goal is, I think they both excel at.
I'm gonna give this one an 8 as well.
Yeah, I would give it an 8 also. Really great. I was surprised at some of the slower moments, but I mean, it's an older movie. I should have known. But yeah, it's really dramatic, really sad, but it, like you said earlier, it does stick with you. It definitely stayed with me for a while. and it's crazy just how I think even the older movies kind of are almost similar in the sense of how different the first one is to recent movie, and how the first Godzilla is like this dour, depressing drama where Godzilla barely shows up, and when he does, he makes an impact. But then the sequels are like super fun, and there's fights, and they show Godzilla's face all the time. Same thing with like the MonsterVerse movies, where the first Godzilla by Gareth Edwards is like dour and atmospheric, and there's a bunch of smoke and ashes, and you barely see Godzilla, but when he does, he makes an impact. Whereas something like Godzilla versus Kong, you see everything, and it's just silly. It's just insane tonal shifts from not that many movies after, which is a perfect segue to our next film. Tyler, would you like to introduce Godzilla vs. Kong?
Godzilla vs. Kong. It's the fourth movie in Legendary and Warner Brothers MonsterVerse franchise. It is I believe, the second attempt, this franchise, I mean, to bring Godzilla to American audiences after the was it 1999 or 1998 movie?
98,
the Roland Emmerich one?
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
98. And this is, let me see here. This is the fourth King Kong reboot as well, I believe. Theatrical, I mean. So, and the second time we, see these two characters duke it out. So it's about, well, Godzilla fights King Kong. There's human characters.
This is a review. Bye.
There's human characters, but you're not gonna notice them.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't repeat to you what the actual plot was right now.
Yeah.
But I liked the fights.
What do you mean? I mean, the plot basically is almost like a Jules Verne type of thing. King Kong is kind of in this this dome, almost like a Truman Show type of dome, where they're keeping him so Godzilla doesn't meet up with him and kill him or fight with him. And so they decide, we need to take Kong to the Hollow Earth. The Hollow Earth is like this place where it's like the way to get there is almost like a mix between 2001 and what was the other movie? Whatever. But essentially, it's a very Jules Verne looking journey to the center of the earth type of place where gravity is defined and all that stuff. And they're going to take him there because they think there's more Kongs there. And on the way, Godzilla wants to fight him because he's like, hey, there can only be one king. And so I think in the terms of making a plot to a movie called Godzilla vs. Kong, I'm glad that they had the actual Titan Godzilla, King Kong, like the actual title character, as part of the driving force of the narrative, instead of, we're going to focus on these human characters and these creatures are going to fight in the background wherever we go. Like Godzilla, like King Kong is the actual driving force of what's happening. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I love this movie. It's so fun. It's so dumb, but I feel like it's so aware that it is. And it has this playful and energetic tone that I really appreciate in movies when they don't take themselves seriously. It felt super Sam Raimi sometimes.
Totally, yeah.
Super 80s at moments. But also harkens back to the silly Godzilla versus movies with the funny guys in the guys in the funny rubber looking suits. And I think overall it's really, really, really entertaining. And sometimes movies only need to be entertaining. and I could definitely see myself watching this on a Friday night when I've had a long week and just to escape, for sure. But Colby, what did you think of Godzilla
I
vs.
mean,
Kong?
it's worth noting that we all got to see this safely in a theater for the first, and which was like most of our.
Oh,
I mean, none of
yes.
us have gotten to go to the theaters in forever. It was my first time being in a movie theater since March of 2020.
Jeez.
Which is the longest I've ever gone in my life. And luckily, I'm vaccinated, and me and Tyler were able to see it in a theater where it was literally just us, because the rates for renting an auditorium are much lower now. Um,
Oh no.
so we were able to see it very safely, which I'm really thankful for. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I loved it because how could I not after going that long without seeing a movie in a theater and then getting to see the biggest, dumbest, funnest movie in theaters? It was amazing. I mean, the script is so stupid, absolutely asinine. It's hilarious. And in many ways, like the original King Kong, it's funny in ways that it's not meant to be.
I
I mean,
mean,
there was a lot of lines of dialogue that I just laughed at.
oh,
But
there are
the
definitely moments
actual.
that are trying to be funny and it's not funny. I agree.
Right.
Yeah. But I think overall, the tone and what it's going for, I think
Yeah.
it's definitely trying to be funny.
But the actual action sequences and the actual major, CGI set pieces are not only super fun and like if you can, I was just hoping to turn my brain off and enjoy them, but I actually did appreciate the direction in them more than I thought I would. I mean, they're
Oh, yeah.
really, really well shot and well directed, and the VFX for
They're
these
well
characters is the
lit.
best it's ever
You
been.
feel they're huge. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I love this movie. Keep going.
Well, I mean, just the way that the camera spins around, the way that the cinematography manages to capture the colossalness of these characters,
Yeah.
the way that it's constantly inverting and going upside down, I thought was really effective. I like the fight scenes in here a lot. I think they're really well choreographed. They use the environment really well. That first fight on the aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean is really creative, and the final fight in Hong Kong with those like those neon lights in the background, so
Oh,
great to
it's
look at.
beautiful.
This whole movie has kind of a neon aesthetic that I really, really like.
Which harkens like to the 80s in a way.
Yeah.
And with like the synth soundtrack here and there. Oh, I agree completely. It's one of the biggest complaints I have of King of the Monsters, which I think you like that one, Tyler.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It objectively speaking, it's not that good, but I personally liked it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Tyler with that one.
But I kind of hate that one. I think it focuses way too much on the humans. Nobody cares about them at all. And there are definitely moments for sure of fun creature moments. Um, with Ghidorah or Rodan, especially Rodan, there's like a really great scene when he's chasing after like this fighter squad and one guy ejects his seat and Rodan just eats him, which I think was super fun. But overall, the action is just either in snow or in rain or in the dark. I can't see anything. It's too shaky.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it's wide, it's smooth, it's very well lit, and sometimes it's even in the day. You can see what's happening. You feel every punch, every step. It's really great. And in terms of the human characters, can I tell you their names? I can't tell you, but who cares? They're there for that purpose. The purpose of giving you exposition, taking you to where the story needs to go in terms of King Kong, and to get them fighting. And that's all this movie needs to do. And it's aware of this. And I would be more angry if the movie wasn't more aware of what it was going for or what the audience is expecting, which is why King of the Monsters irks me so much, because that movie thinks that you're invested in these people when nobody gives a shit about these people. But this movie just has a fun and playful and really fast paced. Like it flew by. I don't know about you guys. I think it
The
flew by
runtime
for
is
me.
under 2 hours, which I appreciated.
It's like a little bit under 2 hours, which I really appreciated. I feel like I'm rambling. Tyler, go for it.
What? Huh? Okay.
Ah,
Yeah, so I adore the MonsterVerse movies. They're definitely quality wise pretty scattered. But for the most part, I really, really enjoy them because they feel like love letters to these characters. And this movie is, of course, no exception. I feel like this movie's stupid. It's so stupid. It's so
oh yeah.
dumb, but it's such a fun time, and it knows it's a fun time. And even then, I feel like there's still like a lot to it. You know, this isn't a Godzilla movie. This is a King Kong movie, which is something I really appreciate. I think learning more about King Kong in this universe was really fun. You know, seeing him like discover more about like this Hollow Earth place, you know, stuff like that. Seeing him like communicate with that kid, it's all just very fun.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of that kid,
in terms of human stuff, that's the best part.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, that kid did a really good job. I really like that character, and I wish there was kind of more of that.
And she's a real deaf actress too.
Millie Bobby Brown's plotline did not. It didn't do anything.
She didn't need to be in the movie.
Oh no, it
It
sucked.
did not need to be in it.
It sucked.
And this is definitely for me, kind of like an all-time low for the human side of things. In the MonsterVerse movies, King of the Monsters, a lot of people like rag on it, and I think it's fair. The humans just kind of exist. I don't think they're like as bad as people make them out to be, but they don't really. It's not like they add anything thematically. They're just kind of there to keep the plot going. In this one, Millie Bobby Brown like just doesn't even move the plot forward. She's just there.
Nobody does, really.
Yeah, they're all just kind of there.
I honestly think the only character in this movie that is like serves any function is that girl.
Me too.
And I guess by association her mom, because she motivates King Kong. But other than that, like I genuinely think every single character in this movie could have been edited out and it would have been just as good.
They could have explored a lot more. And I know people say like, "Oh, no one cares about the humans in these movies," but there's still potential. I mean, even in like the original Godzilla King Kong, at the very least, the humans were engaging, you know.
But that was going for something completely different.
That's the thing. That's also
like a drama.
That's also
Whereas
worth noting.
This was just a entertaining, balls to the wall, punching, action-filled movie, and nobody
and it
wants
knows that.
any drama from the human characters. Nobody.
Well, it doesn't even necessarily mean need to be drama, but I do think it wasn't impossible to add a little more depth to these characters. You know, I really would have appreciated more development time between the deaf girl and Kong. And we'll probably see that should they make more movies. They left it open to a lot more ideas with the Hollow Earth thing. But they're serviceable. I don't know. They exist. Where the movie really shines is the monsters, of course. Like I said, this is a love letter to these characters. I really, really adore what they did with Kong here. You really see the difference between them. The animation is stellar in this one, especially on King Kong. Like I said, he emotes really well, and you really can get a feel for what he's thinking. And the fight scenes are also really, really well made. They're just really exciting, and they use these characters to the fullest potential. In the original 1962 version, they just kind of, I mean, it's fun, but they just kind of do a few wrestling moves, and it all just comes off as really, really goofy. This one's
it's silly.
Yeah, this one's totally silly too, but it definitely feels like they're using these characters to the fullest potential, which is really fun. The idea of giving Kong like a tool because he's a primate is genius. And even Godzilla, they leaned more into like his reptilian side, which was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite scenes in this and the entirety of the MonsterVerse is when Godzilla ultimately, spoilers, wins. He just pins Kong down and just screams at him for straight up like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And that is like such a, I don't know, it's just really cool seeing them just having a no bars held fight. It's just a really, really fun movie.
Just their interactions too.
Yeah.
Like you were saying when he screams. It's cool seeing the different personalities and characteristics of the monsters, and not just
you really
big, hulking
feel
monsters.
you really feel their personalities shine in this. Yeah. I think it's definitely tacked on, but the Mecha Godzilla fight was also really fun.
Oh, so much fun.
Oh yeah,
It's just rad. I mean, that one's just sick.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Doesn't need to be in this thing, but it does, and I am so glad it does.
Because it was badass.
I really love the designs of these characters too. Speaking of Mechagodzilla, I think like the modernization of him was really, really well done.
Oh yeah, it was cool.
It's super like goofy looking, but I really love it.
I loved it.
Yeah,
Loved it.
It's just a very, very fun movie.
Yeah, like with everything, even like the villain, he's like gray hair.
Yeah, he's so
goatee and the robe. And speaking like a classic silly mustache twirling villain. I love it. It's just so goofy. I just love movies that fully embrace that they're goofy. I don't know, that's just like a Sam Raimi type of thing. Like Sam Raimi is the Orson Welles of goofy movies. And people essentially just, whenever you're trying to make a goofy movie, look to Sam Raimi because he knows how to balance it being goofy while it also being a narratively well thought out movie in a way, in terms of the tone, right? It's not just trying to be something that is not, and this is what I appreciate when a movie is able to embrace a much goofier tone and just say, we're not trying to be Ingmar Bergman here. We're trying to have fun. We're trying to be stupid. We're trying to be fun and silly. I said fun twice, but you know what I mean. And I think that's why I'm just much more forgiving of this than something else, like any other movie, like a Roland Emmerich movie or like a Michael Bay movie or something where the characters are just so stupid and are not needed. When the tone is sometimes trying to be serious or like, look at this is super cool, when it's just obnoxious and dumb. But this was just, it was just an overall, like, it was a blast for me.
Yeah. Like you said, King Kong is definitely the main character. And that obviously is a carryover from what we're talking about before from the original movies, that in the original King Kong is much more of a character where Godzilla is a symbol. In this movie, narratively speaking, King Kong is kind of the protagonist, and for the most part, Godzilla is kind of the antagonist. Godzilla basically only shows up to fight Kong, whereas Kong has his own plot going on the whole time that Godzilla is not a part of. I like that as a fan of King Kong. I think it worked well for the story. I'm sure for a big Godzilla fan, it probably would have been nice for him to have some more scenes on his own. And he has one or two. But something that was interesting is the reason that the director said, that Adam Wingard said he wanted to do that, is he compared them to like Rocky and Apollo. He said that just naturally, based on their character designs, King Kong is kind of the underdog, which makes him more interesting as a protagonist. And because he's a primate and he has opposable thumbs and a more human-like face, he's a better he's like more relatable to an average audience. And so for those reasons, he's just a better protagonist. He also said some weird stuff about them representing politics that I don't think is accurate or true at all. But I don't know what he was trying to get at there. But I do think that it was mostly a pretty smart choice to make Kong our protagonist. And when it comes to the Hollow Earth sequence, like I said earlier with the environments in the original King Kong with Skull Island, I love the creative and imaginative design of that location and the creatures in it. I just love the fantasy world aspect of it, and it looks great. The CGI in this movie is so incredible, all around.
Oh, it is like such a pretty movie visually.
Yeah,
it's so bright and shiny, and again, it just reflects the tone of what it's going for. It's super fun. Real quick, there's like two moments. Not two. There's a moment for each for Godzilla and for King Kong that I found really funny. There's a moment where Godzilla evil laughs. You guys remember that?
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like doing his atomic breath to King Kong, basically kicking his ass. And there's a close-up of his face where he laughs maniacally almost. Like he just kind of snickers at him. It's like, what? Like that's so weird. And then there's a moment where King Kong is revived and his shoulder is dislocated. And Lethal Weapon 2 style, he just hits his shoulder against a building and it pops back in the socket and he's ready to fight again. And it's so awesome. I don't know how you guys feel about that. But
Yeah,
I love
it's really fun.
Great.
that silly stuff. Those silly little details to add to kind of their character and their personalities. Just fun moments like that.
Yeah. Something I thought was really funny in the movie that certainly wasn't supposed to be was the way that King Kong was communicating with the girl, which I thought was a really cool narrative plot point, that this girl had been like learning to communicate with King Kong, but some of the specific way, like things that they would say to each other through sign language, I'm like, no, what? How? You can't teach that to a monkey. Why is there a sign language word for that? Like, doesn't make any sense. But again, it doesn't matter. It just made me laugh.
No, I get you. Like, how do you sign language Godzilla?
Exactly. There's a point where she's like, look, Kong, Godzilla's over there. And I was like, there was not a sign for Godzilla. Kong has never met Godzilla before. How do you teach him that this sign means Godzilla? He doesn't know what that is. Like,
don't worry about it.
So goofy.
No, I get you.
Goofy in the best way.
For sure. Oh, man. I mean, it's simple. It's a simple, fun, dumb, escapist movie. And I think it's needed most now, especially with this whole pandemic, where everything's just so dour, and people, this is the right time for escapism, for going back to the movies, something big and silly, and you can turn your brain off and escape from all the horrors that are happening from outside. And I'm happy that it's making a lot of money. Like
it's doing really well.
Gives me hope for the future of movies, for sure. So we'll see what happens from here. But yeah, if you're vaccinated and you think it's safe, go to the movies and watch it and enjoy. Try and watch it in the biggest screen you can find. It's worth it. It's such a blast.
And if you're not comfortable with that, or you don't have a theater around you that is taking the right precautions, then it's available on HBO Max.
Yeah.
It's also a good way of watching it. But theaters are obviously preferable for such a spectacle movie.
Yeah, definitely. What would you guys rate it?
Probably like a 7 out of 10.
Uh-huh.
I give it a 6, which usually means that the movie's passable, but I didn't really enjoy it. But here it's kind of the opposite. The movie's stupid, but I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Nice. Yeah, 7 out of 10 for sure. I can definitely see it going up. It's a very, very high 7. I had fun. I don't know. It's super silly. It's super goofy. I'm definitely buying this on Blu-ray for sure, which I don't own the other ones. It's probably my favorite of the Monsterverse movies. Probably.
Mine has still got to be Kong Skull Island. I'm a big fan of that movie.
That one's really fun.
Yeah.
I think the original, well, the 2014 rather, Godzilla.
Yeah.
Would be my favorite. I think.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, it's crazy how tonally different that is from this movie. how that's like super serious and atmospheric and very held back, and the action and what it's showing. And that one's also a really solid movie too,
I like
with
that one too.
great performances and just great atmosphere. Whereas this is just a completely silly, like a little kid playing with his toy, just going and then. It's great stuff. Yeah. Yeah. We are.
So
I think we're done.
before we hop off for this episode, what have you guys been watching lately? Do you want to give any recommendations? Tyler, why don't you start?
Yeah. I've been mostly, besides going through the Godzilla stuff, I've been mostly rewatching a lot of things. I recently rewatched, I mentioned this in the last podcast, Son of the White Mare, which is one of my favorite movies. I also saw Raya, which existed. That was a
Yep.
movie for sure. Um, but other than that, I haven't been watching too much. It's just there hasn't really been all. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a lie. I did see Sound of Metal, which I thought was phenomenal.
Oh, love Sound of Metal.
That was a really really fun, not fun. I'm sorry, good movie. Uh, I think that's a serious contender for Best Picture. But yeah, so that's just what I've been watching.
Nice. What about you, Kobe?
I finally watched what was probably the number one movie on my list of shame, which was Apocalypse Now.
Oh,
And
nice.
this is very obvious, but I mean, it's a damn masterpiece. Like, I wasn't expecting any less, but um, I was very pleased. It was basically exactly what I expected it to be in a good way, because I expected a masterpiece. And I'm
Yeah.
also looking forward to watching the final cut, the extended version. Other than that, I've been rewatching Clone High.
Nice.
I love that show.
Way back
Yeah.
in 1980s, secret government employees. We should talk about that series someday in the podcast.
We really should. Well, there's a new Lord and Miller movie coming out, so maybe that'd be a good opportunity.
Heyo.
Hey,
Awesome.
what about you, Sebastian?
I rewatched The Princess Bride the other day. Fantastic movie. Probably the wittiest screenplay ever written, besides something from Billy Wilder. Obviously, I was rewatching some of the MonsterVerse movies for before Godzilla vs. Kong. I watched this movie called Chopping Mall with my friends. This really silly horror movie, where teenagers sleep at a mall, this futuristic mall, and the security there essentially gets malfunction, and they are on a hunt to kill them. And it's super fun. It's super campy. It's 80s stuff. I love it. I got around to watching Missing Link.
That's a really fun one.
I like that one.
It was my least favorite from Laika, personally.
More than Box Trolls?
Maybe I would rather watch Box
Wow.
Trolls, but I think an average stop motion movie is 10 times better than Frozen 5. Like, I would rather see a fine, cute stop motion original movie than whatever Disney is presenting. You know what I mean? So, in that aspect, I definitely was able to enjoy it and appreciate it. But I didn't love it as much as like something like Kubo, which I think is like a masterpiece. But yeah, it's basically it. Definitely recommend Chopping Mall. Amazon Prime, if you have that, watch it.
That sounds really
It's wonderful.
silly and fun.
It's so fun.
Alrighty. Well,
Okay.
thank you all for listening to this episode. We appreciate it. It's nice to get a break from talking about like the Before trilogy and Citizen Kane and just get to talk about funny, goofy monster stuff.
Exactly.
Tune in next week. Me and Seb are going to be giving our thoughts and our predictions on the 2021 Oscar nominations. It is going to be the first of 2 Oscar episodes. The second will be after the ceremony, where we will be giving our thoughts and reactions to the winners. So look forward to that. Tyler, thank you again for coming on this episode. It's always great having you, and hope to have you on again in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure, my guy. Super fun. Thank you again.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you all for listening, and I don't know. Have a good week. Teach a monkey sign language.
Shut up, Josh.
Correct. Oh, God.
Shut up, Josh.
Shut up, Josh. I don't even know what this is. Okay. Bye, guys.
It's a line from the movie. It's a funny line from the movie. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.